Interpreter of Maladies, Part 7. Let us refresh your memory. In the last class, we have seen Mrs. Das explaining to Mr. Kapasi the story of how she and Mr. Das met, fell in love, and married. Once a friend of Mr. Das came to stay with them for a week when Bobby was conceived. She told the secret to nobody, even to that man. She told Mr. Kapasi after 8 years because she felt that he will be able to understand the mind of others, being an interpreter of maladies. Kapasi felt sad when he saw Mr. Das along with the children. When Mr. Kapasi asks whether it is pain or guilt that she feels, without answering, she goes out of the car to the path outside. That's where we stopped in the last class. Now let us continue. Mrs. Das was unable to answer the question of Mr. Kapasi whether she feels pain or guilt. She went carrying some puffed rice in her hands. As she dropped some on the ground, the monkeys began to follow her. From there she called Mr. Das and told them to wait, so that she will join them. Mr. Das and the children became enthusiastic as they could take photographs together. It was then that they noticed Bobby was not among them. They began frantically searching for the boy. Finally, they saw him, surrounded by a group of monkeys. The monkeys were pulling at his t-shirt with their black fingers. The puffed rice spilled by Mrs. Das was scattered at his feet. The monkeys were hurting the boy. Mr. Kapasi suddenly took a stick and shooed them away. Then he carried Bobby in his hands to his parents. The boy was really frightened. Mr. and Mrs. Das then began to take care of that boy. Then they wanted to leave the place. As Mrs. Das took Bobby in her hands and fixed his hair, the slip of paper in which Mr. Kapasi had written his address flew away in the wind. No one but Kapasi noticed it. It flew higher and higher in the wind. Mr. Kapasi then observed the Das family together, all gathered around Bobby, taking care of him. Mr. Kapasi felt that this was the picture of Das family that he would always remember. Commenting on this, when the monkeys surrounded Bobby, Mr. Kapasi carried the boy to his parents as they began to take care of him. When Mrs. Das took the comb out of her bag to fix Bobby's hair, the piece of paper in which Mr. Kapasi's address was written flew away. See, this event is important in the story. This means that there is no chance of continuing the relationship between Mrs. Das and Kapasi. Actually, Mr. Kapasi was absolutely disappointed when he came to know that Mrs. Das was an unfaithful wife. So he was completely taken aback by this information. The only picture that remains in his mind of the Das family was the moment when all all of them were taking care of the little boy, Bobby, who is not in fact the son of Mr. Das. So that's where the story ends.